guys, we're here today at Fast Forward Race Engines to disassemble the engine that was in my car for the second half of last year. This engine was put in the car at FL2K, and if you watch the videos leading up to this, you know that we've won a lot of races with this engine.
Here we go! Top end of the racetrack! Wind light, give it to La Sala! 648, Brett La Sala!
We had this engine on the hub dyno, made 2,900 horsepower, and we began to make a little coolant pressure. At FL2K, when we started running over 50 pounds of boost, we noticed that we started to get an increased main bearing wear because of the stock crankshaft. So this is that engine as well. So we're going to take it apart, investigate the systems, and see what we see, and you get to see it along with us.
So as this engine continues to make more and more power, we get to tune it to a higher level. And some of that is understanding how the engine changes shape as you stress it and what we can do to combat that. So when you start talking about something like mitigating bearing wear or mitigating coolant pressure, it doesn't need to be a situation where you say, well, that's all the engine's worth. You can continue to look at these different systems in the engine and continue to tune it. And you may be 300 horsepower away from an absolute mechanical failure, or you may be 500 horsepower away from absolute mechanical failure. But it's important that you understand that just because you have a problem or a success at a horsepower level, you can't label that the gospel. So this engine is now living at nearly 3,000 horsepower to the hubs or to the tires, and trapping this car nearly 230 miles an hour in the quarter mile, and it's continuing in its development. So it's a better engine than it was a year ago, and it will be a better engine next year. And that means that if you are in the market for an engine, you can look at this FRV program and know that you're getting a program that is of the highest level of development.
This engine here is our stage 4, so it's still got the stock crankshaft in it. This has got some new cylinder head stuff that we have done with some copper head gaskets. So we're going to go ahead and start by taking the top end apart, taking the heads off of it. We'll look at the head gaskets, see what that looks like, and then we'll go and move down to the bottom end and see what it all looks like. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start to take the head bolts loose. We're going to try to break these loose with the torque wrench here. And we're going to see if it's lost any torque.
Well, what's interesting about this is it doesn't have the same amount of material around every fastener. You have an engine block that's designed to fit in an engine, so it has different amounts of material on the ends of the engine than it does in the center of the engine. And as the engine is heated and cooled through different cycles, you can have different movement on the deck. So you could have engines that have problematic cylinders for head gasket sealing on one cylinder, but not on another. And part of this is just a discovery process to understand how much this stuff is moving around in operation.
Yep. And then these heads were torqued down here in the engine shop, and then heat cycled here, and then retorqued, and then put in the car. And they haven't been retorqued since then because you can't access the bolts well because of the camshafts. And a lot of copper head gasket guys will do a retorque throughout the process, so I kind of wanted to see where they were.
No, that's important. If you're using a copper head gasket, you typically put the engine together, and then you run the engine through a heat cycle, and then you loosen the fasteners and retorque the cylinder head, because that copper is going to move around more than, say, a multi-layer steel head gasket. So one of the things they do here is they have a water heater, and they'll hook the water heater up to the engine block and bring the engine block up to temperature on the stand, then cool it back down and retorque the heads, because you don't have to take all the valve train out of the engine to retorque the heads while it's in the car. So it's just an easier approach than doing it in the vehicle. But with a copper gasket, you do want to do a retorque after the initial assembly.
So this is pretty neat. So bottom row might be a smidge tighter.
So what was the normal manifold pressure that this engine saw?
Well, FL2K was when we needed to go faster. Garrett was in the class. There was a few other faster cars in the class. We had been, I think, like a 652 leading up to that race. And then the pass, when we had the main bearing failure in qualifying, we ran around 53 pounds of boost. And
Okay.
we learned on the hub dyno that 53 pounds is around 2,700 horsepower. So the engine lived that full year leading up to that race at 50 pounds of boost with no issues at all. And basically when we crossed that threshold is when we started noticing the bearing wear.
Okay. Pretty interesting from the aspect of an engine that is low 6-second quarter mile capable, that the valve train is staying in the engine. You're not working on the engine.
Right. That was actually one of the things that crossed my mind when we came here today was at that race, Joe was already building a second engine for the car because we realized that it would be better to cycle 2 in so we can take our time with disassembly and make a better engine for the next one, year to year. And the heads weren't ready yet. The short block was assembled here, but the cylinder heads were still out in the shop. So these heads were actually just taken off that engine that was in the car and putting back on here. So the valve train that was actually running on here had a full year of racing on it. These heads were a full year racing on it as well.
Yeah.
So it was pretty neat.
No, the large lobe diameter, the hydraulic lifter, the long valve spring, like it has a valve train that is kind of itself. Once you get the chains sorted, the valve train itself, valve spring and valve relationship is pretty nice.
It's light.
Yeah, it
Valve
doesn't.
train stuff real light.
Well,
too.
when I first saw the Coyote camshaft, the diameter of the camshaft struck me because I'm like, holy moly,
Pretty good.
they've got that thing slowed down where they're not just, the faster you accelerate the valve open and close, the harder it is to control. So the more gentle the process can be to open and close the valve, the longer the components are going to live.
So if you look here, the top intake side's down pretty good. It's 100, 115 on the exhaust corner. And then this one's very similar. The top side's pretty good. This one was a little low here.
Well, you're also using a conventional 8740 head stud kit. So this is an opportunity that we can move to a 625. It's a custom-made material. It's a stronger material that has a better, it yields at a higher level of pressure. So it's just a stronger fastener. And it doesn't have the hydrogen embrittlement problems that you'd have with like an L19 fastener. It's really a neat material. So moving to that head stud configuration, you should also see a change in how the engine lives, how it holds full pressure.
Sure, and I think it torques at a higher value,
Yep.
probably as well, right?
Yeah, it's 150 foot-pounds.
Yeah.
But you still have an engine that's 4 volts per cylinder.
Sure. Yeah, you're only
You
gonna
know,
get
like,
so
you
far
know, yeah,
in the
like,
movement.
let's not discount the fact that we have an engine that's just over 300 cubic inches. It turns over 10,000 RPM. It has 4 volts per cylinder, and it is making, in the neighborhood of 3,000 horsepower. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a tremendously incredible engine.
We get pretty numb to it. We're like, oh, we're having a bearing problem. It's like, it's got a stock crank in it. Like, what are we even talking about? There's a problem. It's not, like, we shouldn't even be talking about
How much
this.
can you ask?
Yeah, this is it's a good problem to have. Like,
Yeah, you're
and the same thing with that. Same thing with the head spring. Like,
Yeah.
it's making that much power and that much boost on just a pretty conventional gasket setup.
Yeah.
Is
No, this is the same. This is a textbook hot rod gasket setup. It's a copper O-ring. The O-ring is plowed out of one of the components and received in the other.
So this is a set of head studs that ARP didn't have the wall fulling on the bond level.
Yeah.
Which is that, happens. So, if we get those, they can sand them on them, scuff them up, and use that side down.
Yeah, the new kit has basically some traction on the bottom of the washer to keep the washer from rotating. If you have an opportunity to tighten a fastener that the washer starts to rotate with the nut, you could really get an inaccurate torque reading. Or if you're inexperienced with it and you don't know to stop, you can break hardware.
Sure.
a gasket and then a bend or kind of.
You're okay. Good.
Peel it down. There you go.
Need a little bit of tracing. See how it shined here? Just a
Yeah.
little bit of shine.
Yeah, right
Here.
outside of the cylinder.
Yeah.
That does a really good job of sealing still.
Okay, hold on. There you go. Perfect. Very, very similar. Very, very little bit. You can see where it's shined up just a little bit.
There's less. There's less section on this side.
There is.
What's that?
How's the head side look?
This is what we're talking about with the 4 bolts. You want to?
Well, yeah,
where
'cause
it's
you have hardware here, so you have some leakage here. Well, most engines, when they get anywhere near this power level, you're adding fasteners. So you'd add a fastener here and add a fastener here. So you'd have a fastener, say, here and a fastener here, and then you've got a better capture of the cylinder. Because again, if you look at a traditional flange seal, there's bolts all the way around a flange seal. So if you looked at like a high pressure pipe in a pipeline application, maybe there's 20 bolts that are holding that thing perfectly flat and round with minimal amounts of distortion as the fasteners are tightened up. Well, you don't get that here because you have an engine and engines aren't perfect. So with this 4 bolts per cylinder, yeah, you're going to have the most prone leakage in between the cylinders or at the tops and the bottoms. And then there's going to be more material in the head here than there is out here because you've got a water jacket. So the water jacket is this cavity that coolant is flowing through the engine, because this is an engine that can not only survive drag and drive, but win drag and drives. And that's because it has a killer cooling system. So like, what were the temps like when you were just doing sick week?
Like driving?
Yeah.
During the day, they'd be like 180. Driving at night, it'd be like 175.
Yeah, seriously. You have, this is a big perk. You're dealing with a modern OEM engineered base, and you're just adding to it. So solving things like cooling is not really a problem. We just have to solve the problems that are created through making, 3,000 plus horsepower.
Yeah, and this problem every engine has. They're just different approaches to
Well,
get
a lot of engines don't make it past 500. This conversation is totally different.
It's true.
20 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
These numbers that we're all learning as the norm nowadays, they would be straight up fairy tales 20 years ago. Stuff's just gotten so good.
If you look, Jay, at the receiver and the O-ring side, the receiver grab, it's perfect. There's no traces anywhere on the receiver groove side. You can see the step from the step decking of the sleeve. Now look at the other side. This one wasn't as bad. Same with this, the receiver side, you could see the indentation all the way around is pretty prominent.
Yep.
From the sleeve even, not just even the receiver, right? And you don't see any traces on the receiver groove side. But you sure do here, look. Right? We've got a little bit here.
Yeah.
We've got definite fretting here. For sure. And that could just be what we're seeing. That could be the, 25 pounds of coolant pressure.
Right.
Which is, we still have a big window. When that coolant pressure number reaches the boost number, this is no longer, right? So we've still got a pretty good little fuse there. But I think if we could work on that side of it, I think we'll have a little bit better success. My assembly room.
But you just flop it over.
Oh, bro. Fuck it.
Do we got another piece of cardboard out there? You want to just cycle that one out?
It's not my department.
Good thing AJ's not here.
Oh, I'm gonna be hot, bro.
Be twitching over there.
Does he get a little twitch?
He'd be twitching to not say something to us.
It's clean. Like AJ keeps stuff right. I blow this place out. All right, at this point, we're going to disassemble the bottom end. We've got the heads off. We've looked at the head gaskets. They look actually really good. I think we've actually learned some stuff by seeing what we've seen, so we could implement that. So now we're going to take the bottom end apart and see what that looks like.
The cylinder wall should be better in this engine too, because after we tore down the last engine, we realized that I needed to keep up on fogging it better between races. Yeah. I did a better job with this one than the last one, so hopefully there's not a lot of rust spots.
Well, you could see it in it. I mean, it looks really good just from the top side,
Well, The people that live in wet areas, they know. Because if you have alcohol, fuel, and you live in a wet area, you're going to have corrosion in your engine. So fogging the engine and getting oil on those boards is kind of a simple thing to do.
How's the oil been looking? Brett, has it been pretty clean?
Well, so we put this engine in an FL2K, and then we ran the rest of that event with it. Pulled the filter out. We're like, okay, because we didn't. When we put this engine back in, it's pretty much identical to the engine we took out. So we knew at that power level, the problem was starting to show itself. And
We added some main bearing clearance to this one.
right, we did. Yeah, we added some clearance to the mains to see if we could buy a little more time out of the factory crank.
Yep.
And the filter never looked good. After that race, there was some material in it. And I believe it was before we went to Maryland that we actually put bearings in this engine. I did it, at the shop.
Yep. Main bearings?
Main bearings, because we saw the material in the filter.
Yeah.
They didn't spin, they didn't damage the crankshaft or anything, so we actually put a set of bearings in it as kind of a service item to buy us time for the race.
Yep.
And that was basically the situation of this engine, for the rest of the year, was that if we ran it at that power level, it was going to have bearing wear.
It was gonna start touching down. It was gonna start making some material.
Right, it was going to start fluctuating, making material.
Yeah.
But I do love this engine because it's never lost a race. It's never lost a round. It's a very, very good engine.
Good piece.
Yeah.
We're not talking bad about it.
No. She was really, really good. And actually was really sad to take it out.
Not talking bad about her. Oh man.
It was so. It just didn't care. It just kept rolling.
Yeah, you gotta talk nice to him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Ready?
Well, I don't even know if I told Joe about the time I pushed the thrust out of this. I mean, he's gonna find out here pretty soon when he sees the crank back there.
I did. Golly, man, you guys are hard on stuff.
No, we're not. This was a minor oversight when converter pressure because of a gear ratio change.
Well, let's talk about that for a second because, something so simple as converter charge pressure could, ruin an engine real fast.
Oh yeah, and,
so-
it is when we put 8-mount gear set in the transmission.
Okay.
And the first gear in the trans, the loop circuit for that gear comes from the converter charge circuit. And when transmission builder sets the transmissions, depending on what gear set, when they set the jet for converter charge, it's based off that gear set. We changed the gear set, which in turn changed converter pressure because we didn't have it on the trans dyno to reset it up.
Sure.
We raced the car weekend in Bradenton, and I saw a puddle of oil under the back of the car, engine oil.
Okay.
And this engine doesn't leak oil, never leaks oil.
Sure.
What we got on lift saw was coming from the rear main. I pulled the trans out, pulled the flywheel off, and the thrust bearing had spun out and stuck out of the rear main seal. The upper shell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of the rear main seal?
Out of the rear main seal.
Out of the engine?
Out of the engine.
On the outside?
Okay.
But we were racing that next weekend.
Yeah.
So I pulled the oil pan, pulled the main cap, and put a new thrust bearing on. And we get back to the converter pressure thing. We found that at that race, but we found it 3 passes too late. It didn't take any time,
Right.
Because our mind didn't go right to that because
Sure.
we were, we were working on the car in other areas.
So you didn't run it too long to where it destroyed the crankshaft, but you ran it to where it pushed that thrust shell out.
Yeah, the crank is hot. It's definitely a different color back there.
See that one?
But I knew we only had, another event on it, and put it in there, and it got it through.
Well, that's what this engine, this is what we build these for, is to learn and what can it take, what can't it take. You can't take that converter charge pressure, that's for sure.
Right, and it was one of those things that I wasn't happy it happened, but you hear this horror story about thrust bearings on this engine from a lot of people, and I've never had that issue before. So to see the change in converter pressure, I know where my line is now.
Yeah.
The trans brake.
Huge. Yeah. Like I said, the cylinder walls look really good from them. Which we'll check them. We could check. We'll check the finish on the cylinder walls too to see if the finish is laid down on us at all. That's something we've been working on the last year and a half. A lot is cylinder wall finish, which I think that shows on our crankcase pressure numbers.
Yep.
That has consistently gone down.
Yeah.
We're we're in a pretty good spot, I think, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
And obviously the piston shows that tail as well. I mean, that's a pretty good looking piece for that many runs on
For
it.
what it's done, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And that the coating, I think, is going to help keep that cylinder wall finish good because it's got more oil. It's just like a sponge. Keep oil in the cylinder wall so it doesn't wear it down, knock the tops off.
Sure. Well, that's the ticket, right? I mean, it runs on a film of oil, a wedge of oil,
Yeah.
right?
Or
So
it makes metal.
or it makes metal.
Yeah, take your pick.
Yeah, one of the two.
What's that block weight, Bear?
It's like 97 with sleeves
Mm-hmm.
and main.
Yeah, ready to start assembly.
Yeah, it's just under 100.
It's so light.
If we were comparing the new cast block before the 15, you know.
That one's 200 pounds?
Yeah,
100 more.
Yeah.
The thing that scares me about the cast iron stuff is I've never not broke a cast iron block.
Yeah.
Any of the big power builds that I've done with a cast iron block, we've always cracked them. Whether it's cracked in a head bolt hole, whether it's, and I'm talking like big power builds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's definitely limitations to all of it. Just, where are they?
Well, I mean, can you approach the limitations slow enough to correctly identify them?
Yeah, sure.
It's super. Everybody wants to look at a smoking gun and call it an absolute.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as soon as it goes online, that's the problem. Like, it doesn't matter whatever it is, you know. But I think that's one of the benefits we've had too. Is we've, you know, the progression we've made and keeping it together and be able to find the problems before it scatters.
Yeah, it's no good.
Well, it's not a glory run car.
Right.
It's turning the knob, you know, at a reasonable rate.
So anyways, this is a new tool that we made. We have these for the Coyote, the LSs, and the Hemis. Prior to having something like this, you know, we would put a set of vice grips that we milled the teeth off, you know, and you'd clamp them on there and you'd still mar the thing up.
Yeah, that's nice. What's that tool cost?
I think they'll be around like $229.
Man, that's cheaper than the stitches you're gonna get
You know?
screwing around with the wrong tools.
It'll hold up. You can pull the.
Oh, from a technician standpoint, like you cut your hand, you're not working as well. You know, like just from a safety standpoint, that's a smart tool.
No, it's super fun.
Can I try? Sure.
I mean, you know, anytime you get something that's that much easier. Here,
Yeah.
hit the. There you go.
Let me pass that weight. There you go.
Got the counterweight in there on you.
And then it goes right over the center of it.
Yep.
2 dudes, 1 tool. Huh, that's cool.
That's it.
Easy peasy.
For so long, it's still got to be.
Well, like the
feel
LS
good
is
every
like,
time.
I don't build a lot of LSs, but the caps, it's like, it's too much work.
Oh, it's a bear.
Yeah.
Just got to get it down around the counterweights.
Yeah.
And there's a crankshaft in it.
Yep. This is the one you slid mains in?
Right.
Those are.
Well, the bearing certainly sacrificed well.
Oh yeah, I think.
Right, yeah, the crankshafts.
Good timing.
Yeah, you didn't wreck it. Like it was good enough to where you could roll bearings into it.
Right. Oh, yeah, I saw it in the filter, and I knew what the next stage was going to be, so we experienced that.
So this is coming off of number 4.
This is where you were showing me you can really see the flex because it's on the one side of the bearing.
Exactly. So if
Yeah,
you
pretty
take
cool
and
to
you
see.
look here, you can see on the inside, you know, they'll always try to flex this way, you know, normally. So that's what you're seeing here.
Because this is the power stroke of the crankshaft where the rod's literally
Yep.
pushing it down.
Yep, it's rolling on the edges. So you can see that. You could see it here as well. You know, a little bit on the outer edges.
Tell you one thing that this engine is better than its predecessor is the bores do look very nice. So between the coating on the pistons and the fogging,
Right.
like
Well,
Yeah, well, the fogging was the rust, right? The coating is the scuffing.
yes,
Yep. And we changed the cylinder wall finish for this engine as well.
yeah,
We've got a little bit deeper valley in this one and the one that you have in the car. So
yeah. That it'll be
it's rough
interesting
looking.
conversation to have with people in maybe 4 or 5 years when everyone really wraps their head around how the cylinder seals and what it takes to keep it alive.
Keeps the piston alive too.
Keeps
right?
everything. It's oil.
Yeah. You know, I think there was a lot of scuffing problems with the Coyote pistons, and a lot of it was the way that the cylinder wall was holding the oil, right?
Yeah.
You know, and everyone was blaming the piston company, but at the same time in the industry, everybody came out with new CNC hones, you know, and
Right.
all diamonds and this, and it was
Coolant, not oil.
and coolant instead of oil. You know, we still use oil. We don't use coolant. I still use an oil. You know, we do use diamond stuff, but you got to make sure what you're sending out is right.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, the oil pan is the reservoir for the engine. The cylinder wall is the reservoir for the ring and the piston.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This looks great. I mean, it's ridiculous that it looks this great.
No, this
You know?
this is laughable compared to the last one. The cylinder wall's like, as you
Yeah.
put it, 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
I didn't say it one time.
You didn't. You said absolute instead of 100%.
I changed my wordage for you,
I appreciate that.
just for you, Bo.
appreciate that.
So as you saw, we got the engine fully disassembled. As we thought, we were developing coolant pressure. We saw in the head gasket and the trace of where the cylinder pressure was leaking into the cooling system. We saw the bearing wear due to a factory crankshaft. The engine that's in the car now has the same head gasket sealing system as this one, but does have a billet crank. So moving forward with this engine, we're going to change the head gasket sealing system. And then the next engine will come out. We'll see how that crankshaft is living, which we already know it is better than this one by the oil filter because I pull it out after each run and take a look. And, you know, we saw material on this one and the new one doesn't. So we already have the indication from our oil pressure trace and of the oil filter that the crankshaft is doing what we want it to do. So the next step is to get the head sealed on tighter and see if we can make more boost.
So one of the things that's really neat about this program is really getting ahead of it. So not only have we not scattered a bunch of parts on the racetrack, we have an engine that is constantly in development. And now we've got a crankshaft that's got the bearings living well. And when we tear that engine down, it's going to get a head gasket revision. So constantly in progress, looking to make, you know, some import level boost levels.
A lot of improvements.
Yeah.
For sure. We appreciate all of you guys supporting all of us. You know, Brett, Jay, me, you know, it means a lot to us. All the support that you guys show us and all the love, man, you know.
Yeah.
So I know you got a lot of it on Sick Week and that was cool. So thank you guys for all of that.